Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. The Earth was once a vast green and golden canvas, covered in forests that whispered with the passing wind and plains that stretched endlessly beneath the gentle sky. In those ancient ages, long before the rise of great cities or the voices of language, life itself moved in quiet cycles of growth, hunger, and survival. Somewhere in the heart of Africa, hidden among the branches and grasses, a new story was beginning to unfold. It was not sudden, and it was not violent. It was a story of posture, of footsteps, of a slow and graceful change that would one day echo across the entire world. It was the story of how we began to rise, how we began to stand. Imagine the ancestors who came before us, creatures that still clung to the safety of trees, their fingers curled around branches, their legs bent to leap and climb. The forest was their cradle, their shelter from predators, their garden of fruits and leaves. But the world was shifting. Forests began to open into grasslands, and the distance between trees grew wider. The safe canopy was no longer endless, and the earth below invited them to explore. In those moments of transition, something profound stirred. To walk upright meant more than a new way to move. It meant a new way to see, a new way to live, and eventually a new way to dream. Rising onto two legs was not easy. The spine had to curve like a bow, the pelvis had to reshape, the muscles of balance had to strengthen. At first it was clumsy, a wobble in the tall grass, a half step before tipping back into the comfort of four limbs. Yet with each generation the experiment deepened. The advantage was subtle but clear. Standing gave a better view of predators in the distance. Hands freed from walking could carry food, cradle children, or throw stones to defend. Slowly, over countless lifetimes, standing became walking, and walking became a way of life. Archaeologists today uncover fragments of this transformation. A fossilized footprint pressed into ancient volcanic ash, preserved for millions of years, tells us of one small group who walked upright across a cooling earth. Those steps are soft echoes of courage, marking the transition from tree to plain, from instinct to awareness. Each footprint is a quiet reminder that our story began not in glory, but in fragile experiments of survival. The first walkers did not yet think of themselves as different. They were still part of the wild chorus of life, moving among antelopes and lions, scavenging where they could, resting when the sun fell. But something delicate was forming inside them. Standing upright gave more than vision across the plains, it gave vision into possibility. A hand freed from walking could grip a stick, sharpen a stone, or cradle a flame. A mind freed from the urgency of climbing could begin to wonder. The horizon no longer ended at the next tree branch. It stretched outward, pulling the imagination with it. The air itself must have felt different to them. To stand was to open the chest wider, to breathe in the scents of grass and dust, to hear the wind move differently through the ears. Upright, the body became an instrument tuned to the rhythm of open spaces. The heart carried blood against gravity. The balance of muscles became a symphony of adjustments with each step. What we now call bipedalism was not only a physical shift, it was a poetic one, a gentle invitation to experience the earth in a new posture of awareness. Generations passed, and these early humans, Australopithecines as we call them now, wandered through the grasslands of East Africa. Their bodies bore both old and new. They still climbed when they needed to, but their hips, knees and spines whispered of the upright future. They were fragile compared to the beasts around them, yet endurance was their gift. On two legs they could travel far, crossing heat and time with a steady rhythm that no predator could easily match. Slowly the savannas became less threatening, more like a path than a barrier. The rhythm of footsteps became the rhythm of survival. Each step carried the story forward, and each adaptation carved itself into bone and muscle. The curve of the lower spine to support the upright body, the angle of the thigh bone to bring balance, the reshaping of the foot into an arch. Every detail was a verse in this long poem of evolution. Nothing happened overnight. Each change was subtle, barely noticeable within one lifetime. But time was patient, and nature sculpted with hands invisible yet relentless. Perhaps the greatest gift of standing tall was the freedom it gave to the hands. Once walkers, the hands were no longer burdened by the ground. They became tools of expression, strength and creation. With free hands, early humans could gather fruits while walking, carry water across distances, or protect young ones without halting their journey. Later, those same hands would carve stones into blades, shape wood into spears, and eventually trace drawings on cave walls that spoke to the night fires. In the freeing of the hand, the story of humanity found its instrument. Standing also changed the way we connected with one another. Eye to eye, upright, our ancestors began to share a different kind of presence. The gaze could linger, communication could deepen, a hand gesture, a glance, a posture, all took on meaning beyond survival. The upright stance, in its own quiet way, became the canvas for community, for bonding, for the slow unfolding of culture. Not just evolution of the body, but evolution of the heart. Night on the savannah must have carried a special weight. To stand in the darkness, upright, was to feel both small and immense. Above stretched the sky, wider and more endless than the forest canopy. Stars shimmered as if waiting to be understood, and the moon cast shadows that stretched long across the grass. For those early humans, the night sky was not yet a mystery to solve, but it was a companion. Upright, they looked upward more often, and in that upward gaze the seeds of wonder were planted. The shift to walking was also a shift in time. Four-legged creatures often moved with bursts of speed, with leaps and sprints. Upright walking was slower, steadier, more enduring. It allowed our ancestors to journey further in search of food, water, or shelter. This endurance gave them resilience. Over time, the rhythm of long walking shaped their very existence, teaching patience, persistence, and the art of moving steadily forward. That rhythm still echoes in us today, in the meditative calm of a long walk, in the comfort of footsteps repeating like a mantra against the earth. Science tells us that standing tall changed our very brains. As walking freed the hands, new challenges demanded new coordination. The brain grew more complex, weaving together balance, vision, and planning. Each step was a calculation, each tool a problem solved. Slowly the brain expanded, not in a sudden leap, but in gradual layers of growth. The mind stretched to match the body, and together they grew into something the earth had never seen before. The story of standing is not just about bones and muscles, it is about courage. To step away from the trees was to face the open, to risk being seen by predators, to venture into unknown land. Yet step by step, the choice to stand became the choice to become. Those fragile figures, walking upright across the plains, could never have known the vast legacy they were beginning. Yet their footsteps were the first lines of the poem we are still writing. If you listen closely, you can almost hear those ancient footsteps. They are not loud. They are soft, steady, carrying through grass and across dust. They are footsteps of hope, of resilience, of quiet transformation. They remind us that the story of humanity began not with monuments or empires, but with a small group of beings learning to balance against the sky, learning to trust the rhythm of their own steps. As section 1 of our story closes, imagine the horizon as they once saw it. Imagine the tall grasses bending in the wind, the scent of earth rising with the heat, the distant calls of animals carried on the air. In that landscape, fragile yet determined, a figure stands upright, breathing deeply, gazing outward. It is the beginning of us. It is the beginning of the long walk home. The dawn of footsteps was only the first whisper in a symphony that would grow richer with time. As generations walked further into the open world, their lives began to take on a rhythm shaped not just by survival, but by adaptation to landscapes that demanded resilience. Upright walking freed the gaze, and the gaze stretched toward new horizons. Those early humans began to notice the patterns of the plains, the way rivers curved like silver threads, the way herds moved with the seasons, the way storms gathered in the distance. Slowly, an awareness was forming, a quiet map in the mind, built from memory, observation, and the long patience of walking. The savannah, with its endless grass and scattered trees, was not a gentle home. It was filled with dangers that tested every adaptation. Lions prowled in shadows, leopards watched from branches, and crocodiles waited silently in waters. For our ancestors, walking upright was not a shield. It was a chance. It gave them height to see danger sooner, gave them endurance to flee further, gave them tools in their hands to fight if needed. Yet even with these gifts, life was fragile. Each day was a balance between hunger and safety, between thirst and shelter, between the known and the unknown. The upright stance did not erase the wildness of the world. It offered a fragile way to endure it. Endurance became a quiet strength. Unlike predators who relied on bursts of speed, our ancestors relied on persistence. They could chase not with swiftness, but with time. A hunt was not always a chase of minutes, but of hours, even days. This ability, what scientists call persistence hunting, was born from the rhythm of walking upright beneath the hot sun. While other creatures tired and collapsed, the early humans kept moving, their bodies cooling through sweat, their lungs steady, their strides unbroken. In this way, they learned that survival could be patient, that victory could be slow and steady, that footsteps could outlast claws and fangs. With each step, their senses grew sharper. Eyes scanned the horizon not only for danger, but for opportunity. They learned to read the ground, to see the faint depressions of hooves, the subtle curve of broken grass, the whispers of water beneath dry soil. Their awareness of the land became intimate, woven into every step they took. The earth was not a background, it was a living companion, a teacher, a constant presence. The upright body allowed them to carry this knowledge further, to pass it along in footsteps that marked new paths. In these journeys, the role of hands began to blossom. Freed from the rhythm of crawling, hands could carry stones, and stones became tools. At first, they were simple, perhaps just sharp edges to cut meat or crack bones. But even the simplest stone carried in a hand was a seed of transformation. To carry a tool was to imagine a future need, to plan for hunger or defense, to think beyond the moment. Slowly those stones became sharper, more carefully shaped, more purposeful. Each flake chipped from a rock was a note in the song of intelligence, a small sign that the mind was reaching beyond instinct. The campfires of history tell us that fire itself became part of this unfolding story. Perhaps lightning struck a dry tree and flames licked the sky. Perhaps a small group gathered near the warmth, frightened but curious. To stand near fire was to feel both fear and wonder, to sense its danger, but also its gift. In time they learned to keep it, to carry embers, to guard its light. Fire was not just heat and safety, it was a new centre for community. Upright, they sat around flames, faces glowing, eyes reflecting sparks. Fire became the heart of gathering, the quiet place where stories may have first begun, where silence became shared wonder. Walking upright also transformed the way early humans connected with one another. With hands-free, gestures carried meaning. A pointed finger, a lifted palm, a shared object. These were the beginnings of language without words. Followed, shaped by the breath that upright posture allowed more freely. Voices began to rise in new ways, carrying warnings, laughter, comfort. The upright stance was not just a change in bone and muscle, it was a change in communication, a foundation upon which language itself would eventually rise. And as language flickered to life, so too did memory. Around firelight, footsteps of the day could become stories of the night. Tales of danger survived became lessons. Paths walked became maps described. Each memory shared was a gift passed forward, a way of making the past present and the future possible. In those quiet exchanges, the mind grew not only within one person but across many. Humanity became not just a collection of individuals, but a community woven together by shared footsteps and shared voices. The savannah sky remained a constant companion. Day by day, the sun stretched shadows long and short, teaching time through light. Night by night, the stars spread their patterns, silent yet eternal. To stand upright beneath them was to feel both small and infinite. Perhaps some of the earliest questions stirred in those moments. Where does the sun go when it sets? Why does the moon change shape? What are the lights above that never fall? These were not yet scientific inquiries, but they were seeds of wonder. Upright, gazing upward, our ancestors began the slow journey of curiosity that would one day become science. The physical changes deepened. The pelvis reshaped to cradle the upright body. The spine developed curves to balance the head above the shoulders. The arch of the foot became a spring, absorbing shock with each step. These were not quick changes, but sculpted over millions of years. Each adaptation was a whisper in the long dialogue between body and earth, each step refining the dance of balance and motion. The upright body was not perfect, it carried strains and challenges, but it was resilient, and resilience became the heart of survival. The social changes deepened as well. To stand was to carry children differently, to share burdens differently, to see one another differently. The upright life wove threads of cooperation as hands joined not only in carrying but in building. Over time, those threads became bonds, and bonds became societies. What began as survival became connection, and connection became culture. It was a slow weaving, a quiet unfolding, but it carried within it the essence of what we now call humanity. Through it all, the footsteps continued. Each step was both ordinary and extraordinary, both simple and profound. To walk upright was to carry the past forward and to open the future wide. In the endless rhythm of walking, humanity found its first identity, not as climbers of trees, not as fleeting shadows in the grass, but as walkers beneath the sky. That identity would carry them across plains, across mountains, across oceans. Carry them into language, into art, into thought itself. As this second section draws toward its close, imagine again the savannah at dusk. A small group walks together, their shadows stretching long across the earth. In their hands, simple stones. In their eyes, the glow of firelight ahead. They walk not in haste, but in steady rhythm, guided by endurance, bound by community. Their story is only beginning, but already it carries the shape of what we are. Every footstep they place is a promise, echoing forward to us, the promise that walking upright was never just about survival, it was about becoming. The footsteps of our ancestors did more than move them across the earth. They moved them through time, carrying each generation closer to something unimagined, closer to the delicate spark of what we now call humanity. By the time the upright form had become the norm, entire landscapes had been reshaped in their memory. Footpaths cut through grasses, stones bore marks of hands, and fire pits left traces of gathering. Each imprint, whether of foot, hand, or flame, was a letter in the great poem of evolution, written not in ink, but in soil, in ash, in bone. To stand tall was to write a story on the world itself, and that story would never fade. In these long ages, new challenges appeared. Climate shifted, sometimes gently, sometimes with sudden force. The forest shrank further, rivers dried and returned, ice crept and melted. Through it all, the upright body proved to be a vessel of endurance. Walking allowed them to migrate, to follow herds, to seek water, to adapt again and again. No single place was forever, but the ability to move made every place possible. The savannas of Africa were the cradle, but the footsteps would not remain there. Already the seeds of wandering were planted, and the journey of humanity was stretching outward. But it was not only the body that wandered, it was the mind. Standing gave a new angle of thought. To see far was to imagine far, to plan beyond the moment. The stone in the hand was no longer just a tool, but a possibility. Shapes were chipped more carefully, edges refined. Bones of animals cracked to reveal marrow, a new source of nourishment. With each innovation, survival became more secure, and with each security, time was freed for reflection. The human story was not only about survival, it was about the quiet expansion of imagination. The growth of the brain was not sudden, but over countless millennia. Slowly, the skull expanded to hold a mind of greater complexity, a mind that could recall, anticipate, and even dream. Fire, which had once been a mystery, became a companion, and around its warmth, the mind learned to stretch further still. Shadows flickered, and stories formed. Gestures became words, and words became threads of memory woven into culture. The upright stance had given the body balance, but language gave the mind balance, grounding thought into sound, memory into meaning. And so communities deepened. No longer just groups bound by survival, they became families bound by story. Shared hunts became shared meals, shared dangers became shared triumphs. The upright life made cooperation not only possible but essential. Alone, A walker could endure, but together walkers could flourish. The rhythm of footsteps became the rhythm of society, each step a contribution to the greater journey. Slowly, the path of evolution turned into the path of culture, and humanity began to walk not just across the earth, but into history. The night sky was a constant witness to this unfolding. For as long as they stood beneath it, our ancestors looked upward. The stars that we see tonight were the same they saw then, glimmering with the same silence, whispering the same mystery. To stand upright was to look higher, to align body and gaze with the infinite above. Perhaps in those long nights, wonder deepened into reverence, and reverence into the beginnings of belief. The heavens, unreachable yet present, became mirrors of thought, reflections of yearning. Upright, humanity did not just see the world, it began to seek meaning in it. Bones tell us of these changes. Fossils show the gradual transformation, each fragment a puzzle piece of posture and gait. From the curved fingers of climbers to the strong hips of walkers, from the flat feet of tree dwellers to the arched steps of travellers, we can trace the slow poetry written in anatomy. Archaeological sites preserve the echoes, stone flakes, charred remains, footprints pressed into ancient ground. Each artifact is a whisper from those who walked before, reminding us that our story is not a myth, but a memory etched in earth itself. Yet science also reminds us that this journey was fragile. Many experiments in walking, many branches of early humans did not survive. They too stood, they too walked, yet their lines ended, leaving only traces in the fossil record. We are not the only ones who tried. We are the ones who remained. This fragility deepens the story, for it shows us that evolution is not a march toward perfection, but a weaving of chances. Each step could have led elsewhere, each adaptation could have faltered. That we are here at all is both miracle and mathematics, both inevitability and chance. The endurance of walking carried our ancestors beyond Africa, into lands of stone and ice, across rivers and mountains. Though that part of the journey would come later, it was already written in their bodies, already waiting in their endurance. The upright stance was the foundation for migration, for discovery, for the endless exploration that would define us. The first steps across the savannah were also the first steps toward the globe, toward the eventual meeting of all horizons. It was a journey that had only just begun. As we look back now, the dawn of footsteps glows like a gentle light behind us. It was not grand and not filled with sudden brilliance. It was quiet, patient, steady. It was the slow rise of a species learning to balance, learning to endure, learning to dream. To stand was to change everything, yet in the moment, it was simply survival. The poetry of it lies in hindsight, in knowing what those fragile steps would become. Picture again a lone figure on the plain standing against the wind. In their posture is fragility, but also strength. In their hands, a stone. In their eyes, the horizon. They do not know what they are beginning. They do not know that millions of years later, their descendants will look back and call them the dawn of humanity. Yet every step they take, every footprint they leave, is part of that beginning. We walk still in their echoes, we stand still in their shadow, we dream still in the rhythm they set upon the earth. And so the first story of human evolution closes here, not with an ending, but with a beginning. For to stand tall was never the conclusion. It was the opening line of the vast poem of what we are, the first breath of the song that would carry through fire and language, through art and science, through memory and imagination. The footsteps that began in the grasses of Africa still move within us, reminding us that to stand is to strive and to walk is to become. Long after the first footsteps had found their rhythm upon the earth, another quiet revolution began to glow. It was not written in bone, though bones bore witness to it. It was not shaped in stone, though stone sometimes carried its embers. It was a revolution of light and warmth, of danger turned into comfort, of destruction turned into creation. This was the discovery of fire, not as an enemy but as a companion. To tame fire was to change the course of our story forever, to weave its flame into the fabric of what it meant to be human. The wild fire was always there, long before hands reached for it. Lightning split the sky, and flames crackled across dry grasslands. Volcanoes breathed heat and ash, leaving rivers of fire crawling over earth. Even forests carried it, when drought and wind turned trees into blazing towers. For early humans, fire was a force of terror, unpredictable and merciless. To watch it was to see both beauty and death, to feel both awe and fear. Yet even in that fear, curiosity flickered. Fire danced with a rhythm that called the eye, that drew the imagination, that whispered of warmth in the cold and safety in the night. At first, fire was not tamed. It was borrowed. A burning branch might be carried from a fallen tree, guarded carefully until it died. Families may have huddled near the glowing embers of a lightning strike, finding warmth until the flame faded. To keep fire alive was to hold on to a miracle. It demanded care, attention, memory. Each spark was fragile, and in learning to protect it, our ancestors learned something deeper about responsibility, about foresight, about patience. In guarding flame, they were guarding possibility. The gift of fire was manyfold. Its warmth extended survival into colder nights, into harsher lands. It turned meat from raw to cooked, unlocking energy that fueled the growing brain. It drove away predators, its crackle and light forming a boundary of safety against the darkness. Fire extended the day, pushing back the night, creating hours where minds could gather, talk, imagine. Around the fire, humanity discovered not just survival, but community. It became a circle of belonging, a place where eyes reflected flames and voices carried beyond whispers. Cooking was perhaps the most profound of fire's gifts. Raw roots softened, tough meat grew tender, toxins melted away. The body could draw more from less, nourishing a brain that was hungry for growth. Over countless meals by firelight, the mind expanded. Synapses fired faster, memory deepened, thought stretched further. Fire was not only outside the body, it was inside, shaping metabolism, shaping mind. In its glow, the human brain found fuel for its extraordinary journey. The emotional gifts of fire were just as profound. To sit by flames was to feel more than warmth. It was to feel safety, intimacy, reflection. Fire became a symbol, a silent companion to thought. Shadows flickered on cave walls, and in those flickers the imagination began to play. Figures in the flame resembled animals, ancestors, dreams. Perhaps it was here in the dance of firelight that the first stories were spoken aloud, the first myths born, the first songs hummed. Fire gave humanity not only survival, but the stage upon which culture could rise. Fire also changed the rhythm of time. Day and night were no longer strict boundaries. With flames, the dark became softer, less final. Families could gather beyond sunset, plans could be made, tools repaired, bonds strengthened. The night became a realm of thought rather than only sleep. This extension of time gave space for memory to grow, for knowledge to be shared, for imagination to stretch. Fire was more than heat and light. It was the birth of continuity, the weaving of one day into another through the persistence of flame. The taming of fire was gradual. For thousands of years it was guarded but not created. Sparks of lightning were precious, volcanic embers treasured. Only later would humanity learn to strike stones together, to coax sparks into tinder, to create flame at will. That moment, when fire was no longer found but made, was one of the greatest thresholds in our story. To create fire was to step into mastery of nature, to claim a force of the earth as a tool of survival and imagination. The human hand, already free, now held light itself. The presence of fire reshaped the landscape of humanity's mind. Fear of darkness softened. Bonds of community deepened. Food became richer, safer, more sustaining. Migration into colder lands became possible. And perhaps most importantly, reflection blossomed. Around fire, eyes did not only watch the flame, they watched each other. They saw faces lit in warmth, expressions made visible, emotions revealed. Communication deepened in the glow of firelight, where thoughts could be shared, where laughter could ripple, where grief could be softened by warmth. Imagine such a scene. Night has fallen, and the world outside is filled with the calls of unseen creatures. A small group gathers close, the fire between them alive with sparks. Shadows dance along the cave walls, creating shapes that stir imagination. One person speaks softly, hands gesturing in the glow. Another responds, their voice rising gently, carrying memory of the day's hunt, of a path walked, of danger escaped. The children listen, wide-eyed, the fire reflected in their gaze. This is not mere survival. This is the seed of culture, the spark of belonging, the birth of memory carried not only in minds, but in voices shared. Science shows us the marks of these fires: ash layers in caves, charred bones, blackened stones, all speak of gatherings long before written history. They are silent witnesses to laughter, to warmth, to shared moments beneath stars. Each trace is more than evidence. It is an echo of the first societies, fragile yet profound. Fire was not only tamed, it tamed us, teaching patience, cooperation, imagination. To guard it was to guard life, and in guarding it together, humanity learned the essence of community. As section 1 of this story closes, the flame still glows. It is quiet now, embers humming softly in the night. Around it, figures rest, some asleep, some awake in thought. The fire crackles, and with each spark, the promise of tomorrow lingers. For in that flame lies not only heat and light, but memory, imagination, and the first true sense of what it means to be human. The flames did more than warm the body, they awakened the mind. As the habit of gathering around fire deepened, the hours of night shifted from silence into communion. Sparks rose like tiny stars, and in their glow, voices grew steady, weaving memory into story. Each evening the rhythm repeated, embers tended, meals cooked, tales spoken. Over countless generations, this repetition imprinted itself upon the human spirit, shaping the way we thought, remembered, and imagined. Fire was not just an external tool, it was the quiet forge of memory itself. Cooking by fire was a transformation both simple and profound. The act of roasting food softened it, released new flavors, and unlocked hidden energy. Roots that were once bitter became sweet. Grains that were once inedible became nourishing. Meat that was tough became tender, and bones yielded marrow with ease. These changes enriched diets and fueled the growing brain, demanding less effort from the body while giving more in return. This subtle shift had vast consequences. With more energy for thought, the human mind expanded, learning not only to adapt, but to wonder. The gatherings at firelight also became schools of memory. Around the glow, knowledge was passed along paths across rivers, the movements of animals, the dangers of plants. These lessons were not written but spoken, not stored in books but in minds. Fire extended the time of teaching, allowing wisdom to be repeated, stories to be retold, memories to become tradition. Each flicker of flame carried knowledge forward. Each evening's gathering reinforced the thread of continuity. Through fire, human memory began to stretch beyond the individual, weaving itself into the fabric of community. Firelight also revealed faces, and in faces, emotions. Unlike the shadows of day which hid expressions, the glow of fire highlighted eyes, mouths, gestures. This visibility deepened communication. A smile reflected in firelight was more than comfort. It was connection. A frown was not lost in the dark, but seen, understood, acknowledged. The fire became a mirror, reflecting not only light but empathy. This quiet strengthening of bonds nurtured trust, cooperation, and the earliest roots of society. Beyond survival, fire gave rise to reflection. Watching flames was a meditation in itself, a trance of shifting light. The crackle of wood, the dance of sparks, the endless play of shadow invited minds to drift inward. Perhaps in these moments, early humans found space to imagine, to ask questions, to dream beyond the immediate. Fire was both outward and inward, both practical and spiritual. It was warmth against cold, but also a canvas for thought. In its glow, the seeds of art and belief may have first stirred. Archaeological evidence whispers of these changes. Blackened hearths and caves reveal that fire was kept deliberately, tended carefully. Layers of ash suggest not accidents, but traditions, fires built again and again in the same place, over seasons, over years. Burned bones show meals shared, not only hunted. Stones cracked by heat speak of gatherings larger than one family. Perhaps bands uniting for safety, for celebration. Each trace speaks of lives bound together by flame, of a world where fire shaped not just bodies but the very rhythm of existence. The mastery of fire also expanded humanity's reach. No longer bound to warmth of climate, people could venture into colder lands carrying fire with them. It became the companion of migration, the shield against frost, the light against endless nights. Fire allowed survival where otherwise there would have been none, opening the path to new continents, new challenges, new beginnings. It was not only a local gift, it was a passport to the wider world. In time, fire itself became an object of reverence. It was not merely useful, it was sacred. Flame symbolized life, renewal, transformation. To light a fire was to affirm survival, to kindle hope. In cultures across the ages, fire remained central, ritual flames, eternal torches, sacred hearths. These traditions echo the first awe felt by our ancestors. the first wonder at the strange alchemy of heat and light, fire was more than a tool. It was the first symbol of something greater, the first bridge between the physical and the spiritual. Yet fire also demanded discipline. Left untended, it faded into ash. Left uncontrolled, it consumed everything. To live with fire was to learn responsibility, patience, foresight. It taught the value of care, of vigilance, of cooperation. These lessons seeped into culture, shaping the way communities organized themselves. To tend fire together was to share purpose, to share trust. In its fragile glow, the seeds of morality may have found their soil. Picture again the nightly scene, embers glowing low, sparks rising into the dark. A child listens as an elder speaks, the words weaving images into the imagination. Another tends the fire, feeding it small sticks, keeping its life alive. Faces glow with warmth, and in those faces, trust deepens. These are not just moments of survival, they are moments of becoming. In the humble act of guarding fire, humanity was also guarding its future. As Section 2 closes, the flame burns steady, no longer wild but cared for. It hums with continuity, linking generations through warmth and memory. Fire is no longer a stranger but a companion, no longer a terror but a teacher. It has given energy, connection, reflection, and expansion. Most of all, it has given time, the time to think, to share, to dream. And in that gift of time, the story of humanity grew luminous, like sparks rising into the endless night. The story of fire does not end with its taming. To hold fire was to hold a paradox, a force of destruction turned into creation, a danger transformed into safety, a wild spirit made into a companion. Yet within that paradox lay the essence of what it meant to be human. To master fire was to step into a new kind of relationship with nature, one where fear could be shaped into wonder, where survival could be lifted into meaning. The flame did more than burn. It illuminated the path toward imagination, culture, and destiny. In the glow of firelight, art was born. Shadows danced upon cave walls, and in those shadows patterns began to form. The mind, stirred by the flicker, began to shape animals and spirits, to see forms in flame and charcoal. Charred sticks became the first brushes, stone walls the first canvases. Fire gave not only light to see but inspiration to create. It was as if the flame whispered stories waiting to be told, and hands answered by tracing them onto stone. The connection between fire and creativity remains even now, as every candlelit thought and every flickering hearth stirs reflection. The fire also reshaped time itself. Before its mastery, darkness was absolute, pressing down upon the night with weight. With fire, the night became softer, extended. Tasks once impossible after sunset became natural, repairing tools, preparing food, comforting children. More importantly, conversations could continue, ideas could flow, questions could rise. Fire lengthened the day, but more than that, it expanded the mind's horizon. It created spaces where imagination could grow, where culture could blossom, where memory could be shared across generations. The communities that formed around fire carried with them more than warmth. They carried identity. Each fire became a centre, a heart of belonging. Families gathered around their flame, tribes around theirs. In this way, fire gave humans a sense of home, not tied only to place but to presence. A fire could be built anywhere, and wherever it burned, home existed. This portability of belonging became one of humanity's greatest strengths, allowing migration, exploration, and expansion. Fire was not only fuel for the body, it was fuel for the journey. But fire was also a teacher of humility. Its glow demanded care, its survival demanded attention. To neglect it was to lose it. To disrespect it was to invite harm. Entire groups may have been defined by their ability to tend flames, to carry embers from one camp to the next, to guard against both cold and chaos. In this delicate balance, humanity learned stewardship, an awareness that survival depended not only on taking from nature, but on nurturing what had been given. In this way, fire was the first lesson in responsibility, a lesson that would echo through every future relationship with the earth. The archaeological record tells us that fire sites became places of gathering larger than the immediate family. Hearths found in caves show layers of ash, suggesting not single moments but long traditions revisited over years. This reveals something profound. Fire was not only practical but communal. It drew groups together, merging families into bands, bands into tribes. The flame united, its glow binding strangers into kin. Around it, disputes may have softened, alliances may have formed, rituals may have begun. In fire, society found its circle, and in that circle, humanity found itself. The myths of later cultures often remember fire as a stolen gift, a treasure wrested from gods or nature. These myths are not literal history, but they carry truth. Fire felt divine, sacred, something beyond ordinary grasp. To hold it was to feel chosen, to feel connected to a power greater than oneself. The reverence that grew around fire was not superstition alone. It was recognition of its central role in shaping existence. In every culture that followed, fire remained a symbol of life, renewal, transformation. It was the visible soul of survival. As the ages turned, fire carried humanity further. It hardened clay into pottery, preserving food. It forged metal into tools, reshaping landscapes. It lit torches that guided exploration, warmed shelters in frozen lands, powered engines in centuries yet to come. From the first spark borrowed from lightning to the flames of cities that would one day shine against the night, fire remained the constant thread. Every step of human advancement was, in some way, traced in its glow, but in the quiet beginnings it was simpler. It was warmth in the cold, it was safety in the dark, it was a circle of light in an endless wilderness. It was voices rising softly, faces glowing gently, hands extended in trust. In those humble nights, the essence of humanity was being shaped, not through conquest or invention, but through the quiet act of tending embers, of gathering together, of remembering. Fire was the keeper of memory, the guardian of belonging, the spark of imagination. And so the story of fire is not only about survival, it is about transformation. It turned food into fuel for thought, darkness into a canvas for dreams, fear into reverence, isolation into community. To sit by fire was to sit at the beginning of what we now call civilization. Its crackle was the first language of belonging, its light the first page of culture, its warmth the first embrace of society. Fire was not just tamed by us, it tamed us, shaping the way we live, think and connect. As Section 3 draws to a close, imagine again the night long ago. The world outside is vast, filled with shadows and silence. Within the circle of firelight there is warmth, laughter, reflection. Sparks rise and vanish into the sky as if carrying prayers, as if carrying memory itself. Those embers are still with us, glowing in every hearth, every candle, every flame that lights our way. To tend fire is to tend our humanity, to remember where we came from, and to carry the spark forward. The flame still burns, and in its glow, we are still becoming. Beneath the skin, beneath the flesh, beneath the pulse of life, there is a quiet architecture that carries us forward. It is the frame upon which every movement depends, the hidden structure that endures long after voices fade. Bones are more than stone within the body. They are the silent library of our history, recording change across millennia, carrying the memory of every step that shaped us. In their curves and hollows, in their marrow and ridges, lies the language of evolution, written without words, whispered without sound. From the earliest ancestors who first stood upon the plains, bone was the canvas upon which transformation was etched. The shape of a pelvis reveals the story of walking upright, balancing the body against gravity. The curve of a spine tells of endurance, of the long patience of distance walked. The arch of a foot shows the shift from climbing branches to crossing savannas. Each fragment uncovered from the earth is a message, a fragment of poetry from the past, telling us how the human body slowly learned to become what it is today. Yet bones are not only markers of change, they are living, growing, reshaping. Even within a single life, bone responds to pressure, to movement, to need. A child's bones bend and lengthen, learning the rhythm of walking. An adult's bones thicken with use, growing stronger with every step and every lift. An elder's bones grow fragile, telling the story of years carried. Bones are not static. They are the quiet participants in life, adapting, remembering, recording. They whisper our personal history, just as they whisper the story of humanity itself. The fossil record is our greatest witness. In the soil of Africa, Asia and beyond, ancient bones lie waiting, sometimes for millions of years. When uncovered, they speak across time. A jawbone with teeth worn by seeds and roots tells of diets long forgotten. A femur angled differently tells of strides across open plains. A skull expanding slowly over eons tells of a mind growing restless, curious, vast. These bones are not silent to the careful eye. They are storytellers, carrying the script of survival, resilience, and imagination. One of the most remarkable fossils ever found is the skeleton of a young girl who lived over 3 million years ago. She is called Lucy, though her true name is lost to time. Her bones told us of a being both old and new, with hips made for upright walking, yet arms still long for climbing. In her fragile form we saw the transition itself, the moment when trees were no longer the only home and the earth below was becoming a new world. Lucy's bones were like verses in the poem of becoming, delicate yet powerful, telling us that change is not sudden but layered, carried in every step. Bones also hold the memory of struggle. Fractures healed tell of injuries survived, of resilience and care within groups. Skulls cracked but mended speak of violence endured, of survival against odds. Teeth worn down to the root tell of hunger, of effort, of persistence. Even disease leaves its mark, lines and scars etched into bone like ancient signatures. In this way, bones are honest. They do not forget pain, they do not erase hardship, they keep it quietly as part of the story, reminding us that humanity has always been fragile and strong at once. But bones do more than endure. They carry life within. In their marrow, blood is born, the red rivers that flow through every vein. Even now, in your own body, bone is alive with quiet labour, creating, renewing, sustaining. The same substance that allowed our ancestors to stand tall also carried the breath of their lives, the pulse of their hearts. Bone is not only structure, it is life itself, hidden within. The silence of bones invites reflection. They speak not with words, but with form. They remind us that beneath every gesture, every laugh, every tear, there is a structure holding us steady, carrying us forward. They remind us that even when flesh fades, something endures. This endurance connects us across time. The bones of ancestors, uncovered from the earth, are not distant. They are kin. In their silent language, we hear echoes of ourselves, echoes of what we once were, echoes of what we are still becoming. Science has learned to read this language with great care. Each fossil is studied, measured, compared, revealing not only individual lives but the grand arc of evolution. The widening of a pelvis marks the rise of childbirth in larger-brained humans. The lengthening of limbs tells of migrations across open land. The thickening of skulls reveals adaptation to new environments. Each discovery adds a line to the poem, a detail to the story, a whisper to the silence. The more we uncover, the more clearly we hear the voice of the bones. And yet, even with science, bones remain deeply poetic. They are reminders of fragility, of mortality, of the passage of time. They are also reminders of resilience, of endurance, of the beauty of change. To hold a fossil in hand is to hold both death and life, both silence and story. It is to touch the deep continuity that links us to every ancestor, every being who walked before us. In that touch, the silent language becomes clear. We are not alone in our journey. We are carried by countless steps, countless lives, countless bones that once stood, walked, endured. As this first section draws to a close, imagine the bones beneath your own skin, holding you upright as you breathe, as you think, as you live. Imagine the bones beneath the earth, resting quietly, carrying memories older than mountains. Imagine the long chain of skeletons, each one whispering to the next, each one part of the unbroken story of humanity. The bones do not shout, they do not rush. They speak softly, steadily, reminding us that we are both fleeting and eternal, both fragile and strong. In their silence, the story of evolution endures. The bones that lie hidden in the earth tell us not only who we were, but how we became. They are like pages in a book, fragile yet enduring, scattered across continents, waiting to be read. Each discovery adds depth to our understanding, filling the silence with meaning. They speak of transformation, of bodies shifting in response to landscapes, climates, and challenges. To study them is to walk backward through time, step by careful step, listening to the whispers of a story too vast for words alone. As generations passed, the bones of our ancestors began to reveal a new rhythm of life. The skull, once small and narrow, began to expand, creating space for a brain that was hungrier for thought. This growth is etched into bone, visible in the fossil record, showing us how curiosity itself found its form. With every generation, the forehead rose higher, the jaw shrank, the cranium swelled. These changes may seem quiet, but they carry the foundation of imagination, of language, of memory. The bones hold these secrets, carved not by hands, but by time itself. Teeth too are storytellers. They carry lines of wear, grooves of diet, signs of struggle. A chipped molar may tell of cracking nuts, of chewing roots. Teeth worn flat may speak of grinding grains. Cavities whisper of sweeter foods, perhaps honey gathered from wild bees. The enamel, like tree rings, preserves the history of nourishment, of scarcity, of adaptation. Through teeth we glimpse meals long forgotten, the hunger of seasons, the creativity of survival. Each smile fossilized in bone is a record of resilience. The bones of hands reveal another chapter. Longer thumbs, stronger grips, wider tips. All these changes tell of a species learning to shape tools, to carve stone, to weave threads of purpose. A handprint on a cave wall, left in ochre, is not just art, it is anatomy speaking through gesture, showing how bone and mind move together into creation. The silent bones of hands remind us that our story was never only about walking upright, it was about shaping, holding, expressing. The freedom of the hand was carried in the strength of bone, and in that freedom lay the birth of culture. The pelvis too speaks volumes. Its widening over time reveals the great challenge of humanity to birth larger-brained infants. Evolution demanded compromise. To walk upright, the pelvis needed to be narrow. To give birth to intelligent children, it needed to widen. The silent record of pelvises shows this tension, this balancing act between movement and life. Each birth was a trial, each survival a triumph, carried forward by bone. The very fact that we exist speaks to this delicate balance etched in our ancestors' hips, their silent sacrifice written in bone. Leg bones tell of endurance. Thick femurs, angled knees, strong ankles all speak of walking vast distances, of chasing prey, of migrating across continents. The arch of the foot, preserved in fossil footprints, tells of journeys made not in haste, but in persistence. Bones reveal that humanity was never built for speed, but for distance, for steady travel beneath sun and stars. The silent language of the legs is the language of patience, of resilience, of journeys that never end. It is a rhythm still inside us, in the calm of a long walk, in the steady beat of footsteps echoing across the earth. But bones do not only tell of survival, they tell of relationships, of care, of compassion. Fossils have been found of individuals who lived long past injuries that should have ended their lives. A broken leg that healed crookedly suggests others cared for the injured, shared food, offered protection. Teeth lost in life but lived beyond tell of groups who supported one another, who understood belonging. Bones reveal that humanity was never only about strength, it was about care, about the quiet decision to nurture the weak, to carry one another forward. In this way, bones whisper the first stories of love. Disease too left its mark. Lesions in bone reveal infections, curves in spines reveal malnutrition, pitted skulls reveal anemia. These scars remind us that suffering was always part of life, that fragility was always present. Yet they also remind us that endurance was stronger still. Even in pain, even in weakness, life continued. Bones bear witness to hardship, but also to resilience, to the refusal of life to yield easily. They tell us that humanity was shaped not only by triumph, but by struggle endured quietly across generations. Archaeologists have learned to listen carefully to these silent voices. With each excavation, each brush of soil away from bone, they step into dialogue with the past. Carbon dating gives age. Measurements reveal form. Comparisons show change. The language of bones is not easy to read, but it is precise, honest, unyielding. Unlike memory, it does not distort. Unlike stories, it does not embellish. Bones speak what they hold, nothing more, nothing less. In their silence lies a truth that grounds us, reminding us that imagination must rest upon evidence, that wonder must walk hand in hand with reality. Yet for all their science, bones remain poetic. To look upon a skull millions of years old is to feel awe, to sense kinship. Those empty sockets once held eyes that saw, that watched, that dreamed. That jaw once spoke or called out in fear. That rib cage once rose and fell with breath. The bones remind us that we are not separate from the past but bound to it, that the line of life stretches unbroken through time. To listen to bones is to listen to our own echo, softened by distance yet still familiar. As this section closes, imagine standing in a cave where bones rest in silence. The air is cool, the earth dark, the shapes delicate yet enduring. In your hand, a fragment of jaw, light yet heavy with meaning. It is not just bone, it is a voice, a memory, a whisper across millennia. It tells you that you are part of something vast, something fragile, something beautiful. The silent language of the bones is the language of continuity, of resilience, of belonging. It tells you that you are never alone, for within you the bones of your ancestors still speak. The bones of our ancestors are more than relics of biology. They are the bridges between past and present, carrying the echoes of voices too old to hear, too faint to remember. To touch them, even in imagination, is to feel the passage of countless lives that walked before us, each step etched into the architecture of the skeleton. In the stillness of bones, we find continuity, a reminder that the essence of who we are is not only written in our minds and cultures, but in the very frame that holds us upright. They tell us not only how we survived, but how we became. One of the most haunting truths about bones is their endurance. Flesh decays, voices fade, memories scatter like smoke in the wind. But bone lingers, stubborn against time, whispering its story across ages. In caves, in soil, in riverbeds, bones wait. They rest quietly, holding within them the signatures of lives once full of struggle, laughter, and wonder. Each rib, each tooth, each vertebra is a chapter in the long unfolding book of humanity. Even broken, even incomplete, they speak in fragments, offering glimpses of who we were. The language of bones is not loud, but it is steady, eternal. The evolution of humanity can be traced like a song through these bones. From the curved fingers of tree climbers to the broad hands of toolmakers, from the narrow chests of early walkers to the wide rib cages of endurance runners, from small skulls of limited memory to great domes of imagination, each note builds upon the last. The bones chart the symphony of becoming, a music too vast for any single lifetime to hear, yet present in every one of us. To study them is to place your ear against the earth and listen for the heartbeat of time. Bones also remind us of the fragility of existence. They reveal how easily a life could be cut short, how survival was never guaranteed. A fractured skull speaks of violence, perhaps between rivals. A pelvis scarred by the difficult childbirth speaks of the narrow margins by which life was passed forward. A spine bent by disease speaks of pain endured in silence. Yet alongside this fragility is resilience, bones that healed, children who survived, families who endured. In these scars, we see not only suffering, but also perseverance. The story of bones is not one of despair, but of quiet triumph repeated across generations. Modern science allows us to read these stories with greater clarity. DNA extracted from bone has given us a deeper voice of the past, revealing connections across continents, kinships between species, patterns of migration, and interbreeding. The bones of Neanderthals tell us they were not strangers, but relatives who shared tools, fires, and even children with our ancestors. The bones of Denisovans, discovered in a single fragment of finger, revealed an entire people once unknown. These discoveries remind us that bones are not only memory, they are revelation, still teaching, still surprising, still expanding the horizon of what it means to be human. Yet even beyond science, bones carry meaning that stirs the soul. In every culture, bones have been honoured, buried, decorated, remembered. They are not treated as waste but as sacred remains, vessels of identity, symbols of continuity. Cemeteries and burial sites are not only places of rest, they are places of reverence where the living acknowledge the silence of the bones and the stories they still hold. This instinct to honour the skeleton speaks of a deep recognition that in bone the human essence endures, even when breath and thought have long departed. The silent language of the bones also whispers forward into us. Your own bones, living beneath your skin, are writing their story now. They record your movements, your struggles, your endurance. They are reshaped by your life, responding to every step, every burden, every joy. When you walk, your bones adapt. When you rest, they rebuild. When you fall, they mend. They are not passive, they are alive, always remembering, always carrying. In this way, your bones are both ancient and new, carrying the echo of ancestors and the signature of your own journey. Perhaps this is why bones carry such a quiet power in our imagination. They are both familiar and mysterious, hidden yet present, fragile yet strong. They remind us that beneath the surface of our lives is a continuity deeper than thought, deeper than culture, deeper even than memory. They connect us to the first beings who walked upright, to the ones who tended fire, to the countless generations who lived, loved, and endured before us. They are the thread that ties us to all who came before, and the thread that will tie others to us when we are gone. As the third section closes, imagine the bones beneath the earth not as silent, but as softly speaking. Imagine them telling of journeys across plains, of nights by fire, of births and deaths, of triumphs and sorrows. Imagine your own bones as part of that chorus, singing in harmony with the past, adding your verse to the unbroken song. The silent language of the bones is the language of being, the language of endurance, the language of belonging. It tells us that we are not fleeting shadows, but part of a structure that stretches across time. It tells us that we stand tall because they stood tall, that we endure because they endured. In their silence, we hear the truth of who we are. There was a time when humanity looked upward and saw only light, only distance, only the unbroken ceiling of the heavens. Yet something within the growing mind began to change. The eyes no longer saw only stars. They began to wonder what the stars meant. The moon was no longer a lamp in the night. It became a question. The clouds were no longer drifting shapes, they became stories. This was the dawn of imagination, the opening of an inner sky as vast as the one above. To imagine was to step into a world not yet real, but possible. It was to see not only what was, but what could be. The roots of imagination were quiet, almost invisible, but they stirred in the same firelight that once warmed survival. Around the crackle of flames, shadows danced, and the mind followed. A rustle in the grass became a lion in waiting. The arc of birds in flight became symbols of freedom. The changing colours of dusk became whispers of something beyond the horizon. This ability to take what is seen and transform it into something more was the gift of a brain that had grown restless, curious, wide. It was the gift of imagination, a spark that would forever alter humanity's place in the world. Imagination began in necessity. To survive required more than instinct. It required seeing the future, predicting the hunt, anticipating the storm. A footprint in the mud became the story of an animal's journey, a trail to be followed. The movement of clouds became the story of rain yet to fall, a warning to seek shelter. Even in its earliest form, imagination gave survival an edge, turning knowledge into foresight, perception into possibility. The mind was learning not only to see, but to shape. Yet imagination was more than survival. It was beauty. In the silence of night, under a canopy of stars, the human mind began to weave patterns. The points of light were not random, they became figures, hunters, animals, stories across the heavens. Constellations were born, not in the stars themselves, but in the human heart. To connect dots of light into myths was to reveal the longing for meaning, the hunger for store with a desire to belong to something larger. The sky became not only above us, but within us, a mirror of our own dreaming. Language carried imagination further. Words gave form to thought, allowed visions to be shared. A story told by one became memory for many. Around firelight, the first myths may have been spoken. Tales of creation, of spirits, of ancestors watching from the sky. These were not falsehoods, but expressions of wonder, attempts to bridge the gap between mystery and understanding. Imagination filled the spaces where knowledge had not yet reached, offering comfort, inspiration, and hope. In this way, imagination was not separate from science. It was its beginning, its seed, its first breath. Art was another gift of dreaming. Hands that once carved stone tools began to carve images, to paint figures upon cave walls, to leave prints in ochre and ash. These were not only decorations, they were visions made visible, imagination given shape. Animals drawn in flickering firelight spoke of hunts to come, of spirits remembered, of beauty observed. The act of creating art was the act of pulling dreams from within and giving them to the world. It was the birth of culture, the echo of imagination upon stone. The dreaming mind also discovered music. A hollow bone became a flute, a rhythm of hands against wood became a song. These sounds carried emotion, lifted spirits, bound groups together. Music did not feed the body, but it fed the soul. It spoke to something beyond survival, something deeper, something ineffable. To create music was to imagine joy, to express sorrow, to give voice to what could not be spoken. It was imagination turned into vibration, into harmony, into connection. Imagination grew with play. Children at the edges of firelight mimicked hunts, told stories with gestures, created games from sticks and stones. Play was not wasted time, it was practice for the mind, a rehearsal for survival, a training ground for creativity. In play, imagination was given freedom to expand, to stretch, to explore possibilities without consequence. This freedom nurtured innovation, teaching the mind to think beyond the immediate, to shape futures yet unseen. Science itself is the child of imagination. To wonder why the stars move, why the seasons change, why the heart beats, these are questions born of dreaming. Without imagination there is no question, only observation. With imagination there is curiosity, and with curiosity the path to discovery. The first tools were not accidents, they were dreams made real, visions turned into stone and wood. The first voyages across rivers and seas were not chance, they were imagination daring to believe in lands unseen. Every step of progress has been guided by imagination, by minds that looked at the world and saw not only what was, but what could be. As this first section closes, imagine a small group gathered beneath the stars. The fire has dimmed, the embers glow, and above them stretches the infinite sky. A child points upward, connecting dots of light with a finger, weaving a story. The adults listen, smile, add their own voices. The stars are silent, yet in their silence, imagination awakens. It fills the night with meaning, it fills the heart with wonder, it fills humanity with the power to dream. And in those dreams, the sky within us begins to shine. Imagination deepened as the human mind continued to grow, stretching far beyond the immediate needs of survival. Around the glow of firelight, when bellies were full and danger was distant for a while, minds wandered into realms unseen. The stars above were more than lights. They became homes for spirits, paths for travellers, signs for the future. The rustle of leaves was more than sound. It became whispers of ancestors, omens of what was to come. This weaving of meaning into the fabric of the world was the quiet flowering of imagination, and through it, humanity learned not only to endure, but to belong. The dreaming skies guided movement. As groups travelled, they learned to follow constellations, to recognize patterns in the heavens that repeated with the seasons. The rising of certain stars told of rains to come, of migrations of animals, of fruits ripening in distant places. Imagination turned these patterns into stories, and stories became guides. A tale of a hunter in the sky was not only myth, it was a memory of direction, a map written in light. The sky became both a canvas of wonder and a compass of survival, blending imagination with knowledge in a dance that shaped the human journey. Art grew bolder under these dreaming skies. Caves deep in the earth still hold the echoes of early visions. Horses, bison, mammoths, painted in pigments of ochre and charcoal. These images were not casual decorations. They were the mind's attempt to capture and shape reality, to make the invisible visible. Perhaps they were prayers for the hunt, perhaps memories of what was seen, perhaps dreams of what might be. In every line, in every handprint, imagination breathed. The walls of caves became mirrors of the human mind, recording not only the world as it was, but as it was felt, as it was hoped for, as it was feared. Music carried imagination into the air. The hollow bone flute sang notes that no bird had taught. The rhythm of drums echoed the heartbeat of community, the steady pulse of belonging. Music turned ordinary gatherings into rituals, into ceremonies that touched the unseen. It carried emotion where words could not, gave voice to longing, to joy, to sorrow. The act of making music was itself an act of dreaming, of shaping sound into meaning, of turning breath and touch into beauty. Through music, imagination became shared, binding people together in harmony. Imagination also gave birth to ritual, the cycle of day and night, the return of the moon, the changing of seasons, all became stories enacted, remembered, honoured. Rituals may have begun as ways to mark time, to prepare for hunts, to comfort the grieving. Yet within them grew the seeds of belief, the recognition that life was woven with mystery. A dance around fire became more than movement. It became a story told with bodies, an offering to unseen powers, a way of connecting to something larger. Ritual was imagination embodied, the dream made visible through rhythm and gesture. The dreaming mind also carried humanity across water and land. To cross a river not yet bridged, to climb a mountain not yet known, to sail toward a horizon with no guarantee of what lay beyond. All these acts were leaps of imagination, the belief that there might be something more on the other side, something unseen but possible, was the courage born of dreaming. Migration itself was guided not only by necessity but by vision, by a willingness to trust the unseen, to imagine the beyond. Every new land discovered was first born in the mind, as a whisper of possibility before it was a reality. Ants itself remained rooted in this dreaming. To imagine that a stone could cut sharper if shaped, that a seed could grow if planted, that fire could be sparked from stone, these were dreams tested against the world. Imagination was not separate from discovery. It was its first step. The capacity to see beyond the immediate, to ask what if, to experiment with possibility, was the quiet engine of progress. Each invention, each tool, each new practice was once a dream, carried in the mind before it was carried in the hand. The dreaming skies also nurtured compassion. To imagine was not only to see beyond the self, but to see into others. Empathy as imagination turned inward, the ability to feel what another feels, to see the world through their eyes. Around firelight, as stories were told, listeners imagined themselves in the tale, facing the lion, finding the fruit, enduring the storm. This shared imagining deepened bonds, creating not only understanding but community. To dream together was to belong together, to become more than individuals, to become humanity. Even in hardship, imagination was a balm. In hunger, dreams of plenty gave hope. In fear, stories of protection gave comfort. In grief, visions of ancestors gave meaning. Imagination softened the weight of life, turning suffering into narrative, chaos into pattern, silence into song. It gave humanity the strength to endure by reminding them that they were part of something larger, something unfolding, something worth believing in. The dreaming skies above were constant, reminding them that the unknown was not empty, but full of possibility. As this second section closes, imagine lying beneath the night sky, the earth cool, the stars endless. Around you, voices rise softly, telling stories of hunters and spirits, of animals and ancestors, of hopes and warnings. The fire flickers, shadows dance, and above it all the constellations glow. The sky is silent, yet in its sourness, the imagination sings. It is the song of belonging, of wonder, of courage to dream beyond the seen. And in that song, humanity takes another step forward, not only into survival, but into meaning. The flowering of imagination was not a single moment, but a long unfolding, a slow expansion of what it meant to see, to feel, to believe. By the time humanity had learned to weave stories in firelight, to paint visions upon cave walls, to lift music into the air, the mind had become something entirely new, a landscape as vast as the sky above. The dreaming skies were no longer only stars and moons. They were mirrors of thought, reflecting the infinite within the human spirit. To imagine was no longer only to survive, it was to create, to connect, to transcend. Imagination carried humanity into myth. The heavens became alive with beings of story, with gods and spirits, with animals whose power guided or warned. The moon was not only a cycle of light, it was a guardian, a mother, a trickster. The sun was not only warmth, it was a giver of life, a force to be honoured. These myths were not illusions, but bridges between the known and the unknown, ways of shaping the chaos of the world into patterns of meaning. Through myth, imagination gave humanity not only wonder but belonging, a sense that the universe itself was woven with story. The dreaming mind also gave rise to memory beyond the individual. Oral traditions carried visions across generations, weaving past, present and future into one thread. A story told by an elder beneath the stars became a memory for children, who in turn carried it forward. In this way, imagination made time itself more expansive. It allowed lessons to be preserved, experiences to be shared, identities to be sustained. The dreaming skies were no longer silent. They were filled with voices, with echoes of ancestors speaking through story. Imagination was the bridge that carried memory across centuries. Innovation too was the child of imagination. Tools became more refined, shaped not only by necessity but by vision. A sharper blade was not only an accident, it was an idea tested, improved, perfected. Clothing was not only for warmth, it was decorated, shaped with care, transformed into expression. Shelters were not only barriers against weather, they became places of belonging, shaped by our imagination into homes. Every improvement, every invention was once unseen, carried first in the dreaming mind before becoming real in the hand. The history of progress is the history of an imagination finding form. Art deepened as imagination grew bold. In the depths of caves, paintings expanded into galleries of vision. Animals layered upon animals, figures layered upon figures, creating scenes of movement, of meaning, of beauty. These images were not only records but reflections, showing how the mind saw the world, how it felt about the world, how it longed for something beyond the world. The act of creating art was itself a declaration that humanity was more than hunger and fear, more than flesh and bone. It was a being that dreamed, that reached, that yearned to leave a mark beyond the moment. Music too blossomed into complexity. Songs became rituals, rhythms became traditions, melodies became carriers of identity. A tune hummed by one voice was taken up by another, weaving harmony where there had been guidance. Music became memory made sound, imagination made audible. It carried stories that could not be painted, emotions that could not be spoken, dreams that could not be enhanced. Even now, when we hear the echo of ancient instruments, we feel the same resonance that stirred our ancestors. The pulse of belonging, the song of imagination given voice. Perhaps the greatest gift of imagination was empathy. To dream was not only to see beyond the self, but to step into the life of another. Stories allowed listeners to feel the fear of the hunter, the joy of the gatherer, the sorrow of loss, the hope of love. This act of imagining another's life deepened bonds, nurtured compassion, strengthened community. Empathy turned groups into societies, strangers into kin, survival into fellowship. The dreaming mind was not only a mind of invention, it was a mind of connection, weaving humanity into a single fabric of shared feeling. The dreaming skies also inspired courage. To imagine was to believe in what was not yet real, to take steps into uncertainty guided only by vision. Every migration, every exploration, every risk carried imagination at its heart. The first boats carved from trees, the first seeds planted in soil, the first villages built by rivers, all were leaps of imagination, daring to see beyond the immediate into the possible. Without imagination, there is no future. With it, humanity became a species of endless horizons, always reaching, always seeking, always dreaming. As time unfolded, imagination did not fade, it expanded. It built temples aligned with stars, mapped skies with mathematics, painted myths into scriptures, carved memory into monuments. It reached upward with towers, outward with journeys, inward with philosophies. Yet even in its grandest forms, it always returned to the same simple truth. Imagination begins in wonder, in the quiet gaze upward, in the child pointing to the stars, in the spark that sees not only what is, but what could be. The dreaming skies are eternal, both above us and within us. As this third section closes, picture the night once more. The stars glimmer endlessly, the moon drifts softly, the fire flickers low. Around it, humanity rests, minds alive with visions. Some dream of tomorrow's hunt, some of ancestors watching, some of spirits unseen. Others simply dream of beauty, of meaning, of belonging. The sky above is vast, but the sky within is just as endless. The dreaming skies remind us that to be human is to imagine, to carry within us a horizon as infinite as the one we see. And in that infinite dreaming, we continue to become. The story of human evolution is not finished. It continues quietly in every heartbeat, in every breath, in every child born into the world. Though we often look back to the savannas of Africa, to the firelit caves, to the ancient bones sleeping in the earth, the truth is that evolution still moves within us. It is not only a tale of the past, but of the present, weaving threads toward the future. The body we carry, the mind we use, the society we shape, all are chapters still being written. All are whispers of what is yet to come. Our bodies bear the traces of this living evolution. The curve of the spine still remembers the challenge of standing upright, a triumph carried with hidden strain. The wisdom teeth, once needed for grinding raw roots and tough meat, now often crowd our jaws, relics of diets we no longer eat. The appendix, small and quiet, lingers as a reminder of plant-heavy meals once central to survival. Even goosebumps, rising when we are cold or afraid, recall a time when thicker hair covered the skin, when fear demanded a bristling defense. Every part of us carries memory, some useful, some fading, all reminders that the past still lives in the present. But evolution does not only look backward, it looks forward. Our environment continues to shape us. The foods we eat, the medicines we use, the technologies we build, all press gently upon the future of humanity. We adapt to cities filled with lights, to screens that glow through the night, to diets far different from those of our ancestors. Our immune systems respond to new diseases, our bodies adjust to new pressures, our genes shift quietly with every generation. Evolution is not distant, it is alive, unfolding even now in silence. The mind too carries the threads of tomorrow. The imagination that once painted animals on cave walls now paints galaxies across the universe, molecules within cells, algorithms within machines. The brain that once learned to walk upright now learns to extend itself through language, through culture, through technology. Our thoughts, our inventions, our choices are part of the evolutionary story shaping not only how we survive but how we dream. Evolution has moved from bone and muscle into memory and imagination, and through them it continues to reshape humanity. Culture itself is an evolutionary force. The way we live together, the knowledge we share, the tools we build, all shape the future. A child born today inherits not only genes, but ideas, not only bone but language, not only body but history. Each invention, each tradition, each lesson becomes part of the thread, weaving into the fabric of what humanity will become. Evolution is no longer only natural, it is cultural, guided by choices, by visions, by dreams. In this way, the story of humanity has become the story of humanity itself, deciding how to grow. Yet within this forward motion lies fragility. The same technology that extends life can threaten it. The same imagination that creates beauty can create destruction. Our choices, more than ever, guide the future of our species. The bones beneath our skin carry endurance, but the world around us is changing faster than bones alone can keep pace. Climate shifts, environments transform, societies collide. The future of evolution is no longer only a matter of nature, it is a matter of responsibility, of how gently we weave the threads we carry. Still, the resilience of humanity endures. We are the children of endurance walkers, of firekeepers, of dreamers who painted stars upon stone. That resilience is within us still. It moves in our capacity to adapt, to create, to imagine new ways forward. The threads of tomorrow are fragile, but they are also strong, braided with the memory of every survival, every triumph, every dream of the past. They remind us that humanity is never finished, never fixed, but always unfolding, always becoming. As this section of our final story closes, imagine yourself as part of this tapestry. Your bones carry echoes of ancient footsteps. Your breath carries the rhythm of ancestors who survived storms and hunger. Your mind carries the firelight of dreams told long ago. You are not only the present, you are a thread in the great weaving, a bridge between past and future. The story of evolution is not behind us. It is within us, around us, before us, and as long as we endure, the threads of tomorrow will continue to be woven. The threads of tomorrow weave themselves in silence, yet they are everywhere. They stretch through the way we eat, the way we live, the way we breathe. They move through our genes, through our cultures, through the choices we make. Evolution has never stopped. It only changes its rhythm. Where once it worked in bones and muscles, now it also works in memory and invention. Where once it shaped hunters upon the plains, now it keeps dreamers beneath glowing screens. Humanity is still becoming, and the story is still unfolding. Our diet is one of the most visible forces shaping us today. Once, meals were simple. Roots dug from soil, fruits gathered from trees, meat hunted with patience and risk. Today, food comes from fields, factories and markets that span the globe. Processed grains, refined sugars, and artificial flavors move through our bodies in ways our ancestors never imagined. These changes press upon our biology, altering metabolism, influencing health, shaping the body's rhythms. Genes respond subtly to these pressures, favoring those who can adapt, leaving behind traces that may one day become permanent. Evolution listens always to the patterns of what we eat. Disease is another weaver of threads. Just as plagues once swept through ancient villages, shaping survival in silence, new illnesses rise in our crowded world. Viruses travel faster now, carried across continents in days. Bacteria evolve resistance to medicines meant to stop them. Our immune systems, ancient yet adaptable, respond in turn, learning, shifting, passing resilience from one generation to the next. Every illness is a test, every recovery a lesson written in the body. Even in suffering, evolution is at work, shaping who survives, shaping who becomes. Technology, too, is part of our evolution. Glasses sharpen weak eyes, machines strengthen weak muscles, medicines extend fragile lives. Once, nature alone decided who would endure. Now, human invention softens that decision, giving survival to those who might once have been lost. This changes the rhythm of evolution, bending it toward compassion, toward inclusion, toward a new kind of strength. Our tools have become part of us, merging with bone and skin, guiding the way we adapt. In this way, humanity evolves not only through nature, but through culture, through the choices of minds and hands. The mind itself continues to grow under these pressures. Once, memory was held in stories passed by voice. Now, memory lives in books, in machines, in networks that span the globe. The brain adapts to this new environment, shifting how it remembers, how it focuses, how it imagines. We are learning to think in ways shaped by technology, to carry knowledge not only in our heads, but in the world around us. This partnership between mind and machine is itself a kind of evolution, weaving new threads into the fabric of humanity. The future may bring even greater changes. Genetic knowledge allows us to see within ourselves, to read the code of life written in every cell. Already we can heal through this knowledge, correcting mistakes once fatal, easing suffering once unending. But this power also raises questions. If we can shape our genes, who decides what should be shaped? If we can guide evolution, what path will we choose? These are the silent questions of tomorrow. Threads waiting to be woven, choices waiting to be made. Yet even with such power, the deeper truth remains. Humanity is bound together by the same ancient story. We are still walkers beneath the sky, still dreamers around the fire, still carriers of bones that whisper of the past. The future may hold machines, medicines, discoveries beyond imagining, but it will also hold the same fragile essence, the need for belonging, for meaning, for connection. These needs are woven into us as deeply as bone and breath, carried forward no matter how the world changes. They are the constant threads in the ever-shifting weave. The environment also presses upon us. As climates shift, as seas rise, as forests fall, humanity adapts. Some adaptations may be cultural, building stronger homes, finding new foods, shaping new societies. Others may be biological, slower yet inevitable, altering how bodies respond to heat, to scarcity, to change. Just as the savannas once shaped our ancestors, the world we shape now will shape those who follow us. Every choice we make is both survival and inheritance, a pattern carried forward into the bones of tomorrow. And through all this, imagination continues to guide. The same dreaming mind that once painted animals on cave walls now paints visions of other planets, of other futures, of possibilities yet unseen. Our destiny may not be bound to Earth alone. Perhaps one day the stars we once gazed upon in wonder will become homes, new skies for new generations. If that future comes, it will not erase the past but extend it, weaving the first footsteps, the first fires, the first dreams into a tapestry as wide as the universe itself. As this second section closes, imagine the threads of your own life stretching outward. Each breath, each step, each thought is part of this great weaving. You're not only a product of the past, you're a participant in the future. Your choices, your kindness, your imagination all ripple outward, shaping the world that will come. The threads of tomorrow are not separate from you. They are you, carried forward in silence, carried forward in resilience, carried forward in the endless becoming of humanity. The threads of tomorrow weave themselves quietly through the present moment, tying past to future in ways often unseen. Evolution has always been this way, not loud, not sudden, but patient, subtle, persistent. Each generation carries forward echoes of the last, shaping the body, the mind, and the spirit. And though we now live in a world of cities and machines, of sciences and stories, we are still part of the same unfolding poem, still bound to the same flow of change that carried our ancestors across plains and oceans. The language of evolution continues to be written line by line in every life we live. Our bones still whisper of the past even as they adapt to the present. Spines bear the burden of uprightness, sometimes strained by chairs and screens instead of endless walking. Hands shaped by stone tools now type across glowing keys, sculpting ideas rather than stone. Eyes once tuned to horizons now focus on close light, adapting to new ways of seeing. Each of these pressures leaves its mark, not only on individuals but on humanity as a whole. Evolution listens to these patterns, recording them in the quiet memory of genes, passing them on, shaping slowly what will come. The brain too is still unfolding. Its vast networks, shaped by firelight and language, now stretch into new patterns of thought, moulded by the constant streams of information. Where once memory was treasured and trained, now memory is extended into machines. Where once silence invited reflection, now noise demands attention. These changes are not without cost, but they also carry possibility. The mind adapts, learning new rhythms, finding new balances, exploring new ways of imagining. The dreaming skies that once gave birth to myth now give birth to science, to visions of galaxies and particles, to questions that stretch even beyond the stars. The brain is not finished, it is still becoming. Culturally, we are weaving a new fabric of humanity. The stories we tell no longer belong only to one fire or one village. They cross oceans in seconds, carried by voices that echo across the globe. This shared imagination shapes identity on a scale never before possible. A song sung in one language can be felt in another. A story told in one place can inspire across continents. Culture itself has become a global force, binding humanity into a single tapestry, weaving threads of connection that span distance and difference. Yet within this vast fabric, the ancient needs remain: belonging, love, meaning. These threads will never fade, for they are the deepest roots of who we are. The choices we make now will be written into the bodies of those who come after us. Climate change, technology, medicine, and culture will leave their marks as surely as savannas, fire, and hunger once did. Already we see hints of this future. Children grow taller in lands of plenty, shorter in lands of scarcity. Immunities form in response to new diseases. Adaptations emerge where environments press hardest. Evolution is not paused, it is alive, shaped by every action, every choice, every breath we take as a species. The threads of tomorrow are woven with our hands. Even as we look forward, the essence of humanity remains rooted in what has always guided us: connection, imagination, endurance. These qualities carried us through storms and hunger, through darkness and uncertainty, through firelight and shadow. They will carry us still into futures we cannot yet see. Perhaps one day we will walk on other planets, beneath skies filled with unfamiliar constellations. Perhaps we will shape our bodies in new ways, blending biology with technology, creating forms we cannot yet imagine. Yet whatever shapes we take, the threads will still be there. The footsteps, the fire, the bones, the dreams. They will never leave us, for they are us. The quiet truth of evolution is that it does not promise perfection. It does not move toward an end. It moves toward survival, toward adaptation, toward possibility. And within that movement, humanity finds meaning. We are not finished. We are not fixed. We are a species in motion, always weaving, always becoming. The threads of tomorrow remind us that the story continues, that the poem is not ended, that the song is still being sung. As this final section of the final story closes, imagine the vast tapestry of human evolution stretched before you. Threads of bone and fire, of memory and imagination, of struggle and triumph weave together into patterns too large to fully see. You are part of that tapestry, a single thread shimmering with its own colour, its own song. Around you, other threads weave, binding past to future, carrying the essence of humanity forward. The story of evolution is not behind us. It flows through us, into tomorrow, into every step yet to be taken. And in that flow, we are endless, fragile yet eternal, always changing, always becoming.